So the Ultra League now has a Premier Cup format in the Go Battle League for Pokemon Go. If you're not familiar, the Premier Cup is basically the same idea as the league that it's about, except no legendary Pokemon. So in Season 2, we had the Master League with a Premier Cup, and the Master League Premier Cup is also going to be part of Season 3 here, and probably seasons beyond as well. No legendaries. And yeah, Ultra League also getting the Premier Cup treatment. So no Giratinas, no Registeels, no Cresselias. So of course people want to know exactly what this Premier Cup Ultra League meta is going to look like. What are the good picks? How should I build a team? Well, that's what I'm here for. In this video, I'm going to be going over the basics of the Premier Cup meta, how it differs from the OG Ultra League. I'm going to let you know some basic team building tips, and then I'm also going to shout out some unique Pokemon that get a little bit of a boost in this Premier Cup format opposed to basic Ultra League. My name is Ryan Swag, I'm the Swagfessor, and this can be Ultra League Premier Cup 101. Let's get into it. So to let you guys know how to read this graphic here, it's actually pretty straightforward. Might look a little convoluted, but it's pretty easy. Every group loses to 2 groups and then beats 2 groups. So you got the flying type Pokemon, they lose to the Charmers, and then they lose to the Steel and Ice type Pokemon, but they beat the Fighters, and then they beat the Fire, Water, Grass Pokemon as well. And then if you follow over to the fighting type Pokemon, the Fighters, they lose to Charm, they lose to the Flyers, they beat the Steel Ice, they beat the Fire, Water, Grass, so on and so forth. So you can just kind of follow this around and get a pretty good idea of what beats what resists what in the meta here. Now I do want to highlight to you guys that this is a simplification of the groups. So there are some Pokemon that are part of a group, but they don't behave, I guess, 100% like this graphic suggests that they would. A good example is like Venusaur and Charizard. They have some pretty decent matchups against the Fighters. They don't always win, they often lose, but they do have some clapback there. Another easy example is Shiftry here. Shiftry is a sub-dark type Pokemon, so if Shiftry goes up against any of the Charmers, obviously it's going to get obliterated, but it's still a grass type Pokemon and behaves for the most part like a grass type Pokemon. So these disadvantages can come with advantages as well though. So you don't do so well against the Charmers, but you do have the Foul Play, and the Foul Play can be pretty nice against a lot of the flying type Pokemon. So, you know, you can make up for it a little bit. So just keep an open mind. Use your brain when using this graphic. I'm just trying to show people the general relationships to help them understand the meta and help them out with team building here. Overall, I'd have to say that this is pretty similar to the OG Ultra League, except instead of Giratina, you got these guys here, all sorts of different flying types. And the result of this is the Charmers and the Steel and the Ice type Pokemon, they're basically as good as ever. And then the Fire, Water, Grass core are basically as harassed as ever. But the Fighters actually have more of a fighting chance now than they would in the Giratina meta. Main reason being is if you swap in a fighting type Pokemon and your opponent responds with a Giratina, you really can't do anything to the Giratina and you're just kind of stuck there. Like, what's your Machamp going to do? You're going to Rock Slide Giratina? Giratina invites you to Rock Slide it. It doesn't care. If it's the end game, you're up like a shield, maybe even 2 shields, and their final Pokemon's Giratina, your fighting type probably isn't going to do so hot. So the oppression of the Giratina has been removed, and as a result, the fighting type Pokemon are going to be much more viable now than they ever have been. So obviously this spells out some issues for the Steel and the Ice type Pokemon because they have even more vulnerabilities now than they had before, but it's definitely a big problem for the tanky generalists here. Basically, you could swap in these guys with little fear that a fighting type Pokemon, let alone a Machamp or like a Shadow Machamp, would come in and just wail on you, take you out like you're nothing. Well, now you do have to worry about that a little bit because there ain't no Giratina keeping these guys in line. I mean, you do have Gengar, right? But Gengar doesn't want to get hit by a charge move. I think if any of these things throw a charge move at Gengar, Gengar is definitely going to want to shield it. So yeah, so the normal types here definitely having a little bit more of a rough time than they had before. Gotta watch out for these guys. You're not a normal type, but you count. A little muck, you count. But I have to say that's probably the main difference. Another difference, of course, too, is Fire, Water, Grass Pokemon are a lot more viable here than they would be in the OG Ultra League. In fact, riffing off of their individual differences, you could probably just build a Fire, Water, Grass team and have it perform pretty well in this meta, because no Giratina to just shut down your entire team. Overall, there are a lot more interesting Pokemon and a lot of different types of teams that can function well in the Premier Cup Ultra League. I don't necessarily think this is like the best thing ever though, and you may want to consider just sticking with the normal Ultra League. When you got the normal Ultra League, you can kind of rely on the fact that your opponent's going to have a Giratina, or rely on the fact that your Giratina is going to be good against a whole bunch of different things, and then have more consistent victories in a way off of that, because the meta is going to be more consistent. When it comes to the Premier Cup Ultra League, it looks a lot more wild in my opinion, and the result of that is that you can have your highs, you know, the roller coaster going up, and you can also have your lows, the roller coaster going down, just depending on what you get matched up with. So I feel like this cup might be a little bit more difficult to win with. One thing I definitely don't appreciate about this cup is Ampharos isn't all that good in it either, just because of the increased fighting type Pokemon and the more variety in the grass type Pokemon. Definitely makes it hard for Ampharos to exist. So, you know, shedding a little tear in my heart for the Ampharos here. I feel like I'm going to dabble in a bit of both. Try the Premier Cup, try the normal Ultra League, see which one I like better. And I think that you guys should probably approach it the same way too. Not exactly better, but definitely different.
It's the sky. It's the sky. It's the sky. It's the sky.
Now, one question that comes up all the time with just about every league, especially when it comes to these Premier Cups, is Shadow Pokemon. And yeah, Shadow Gardevoir is the only Shadow Pokemon that I feel like has to be a Shadow to function well. And you don't even need Shadow Gardevoir for it, because that hammer damage, you know, the extra damage on the charm, is already handled pretty well by the Granbull. And Granbull has earlier charge moves, a little bit more variety going on for it. So it's like, Shadow Gardevoir, take it or leave it, up to you. Everything else is kind of Shadow optional though. Like, Shadow Pokemon aren't getting that big of a benefit, so you don't have to worry about it that much. Two Pokemon I'd say that are Shadow encouraged, you know, of course after the Shadow Gardevoir, would have to be Shadow Machamp and Shadow Abomasnow, and that's just because they have really spammy charge moves, which can allow them to like out-spam and overcome a variety of Pokemon, but at the same time they do lack those defenses now, so a lot of different stuff can also take them out. But I'd have to say between those two, I feel like they pick up a lot more than they lose. Then when it comes to just about everything else, Shadow optional. If you want to build the Shadow, use a Shadow. That's on you, man. One Pokemon I really don't like as a Shadow Pokemon in this cup, though, is the Dragonite. Shadow Dragonite doesn't really impress me that much. I feel like it picks up more losses than what it gains. So, up to you if you want to use Shadow Dragonite or not. I'm not a big fan of it right now.
It's the sky. It's the sky.
So if you want to know how to build a team, using this graphic definitely helps out a lot, because it just highlights what's good against what. For example, let's say you want to lead with a Dragonite, right? So you got Dragonite in the lead. What beats Dragonite? Well, you got the Charmers and you got the Steel and the Ice type Pokemon. Well, what beats them? Well, you can see that the Fire, Water, Grass team here beats those two groups. So if you want to back up Dragonite, probably best to back it up with like a Fire type or a Water type Pokemon, so you can more easily subdue these two groups. Then for your final Pokemon, well, if they led with one of these and then you swap to this, and they're going to counter swap you, so it might be good to have another Pokemon from one of these groups in the back, or maybe a Ice Steel type Pokemon of your very own, just to keep those Charmers in check. And yeah, as far as building teams like that, you can do that with any group. Leading with Machamp, maybe you should back it up with two Steel type Pokemon to handle the Dragons and the Charmers. You going with a Fire type, a Water type, or a Grass type, maybe you want to back them up with Flying type Pokemon. And of course, anywhere in the team building process here, you can throw in one of these generalists if you're not too sure, or maybe you want to, you know, you don't want the end game to be all that certain. Maybe Fate will be in your favor if you go with one of these guys. That also works too. Just know that these guys are going to get whomped by Fighting type Pokemon. That's pretty consistent. And yeah, that's basic team building right there. If you want any canned teams, like, I don't have any for you right now. It's pretty simple, though. Just follow the formula I gave you, and you should be able to build some solid teams off of that. Of course, you can always subscribe to SwagTips, see what hot teams I'm running if I want to post them online, and then, you know, tons of people out there posting their teams. So if you want to wait, see what works, then you can wait. But if you want to dive right in, or you want to try something new, well, there you go.
It's the sky. It's the sky.
Now for some cool highlights here. First up, we have Machamp. specifically like the Shadow Machamp. I really like Shadow Machamp. Just hammers down so many different Pokemon, just like super aggressive. If it has a shield on your opponent, hyper aggressive with the Rock Slide, of course. So yeah, very good, very powerful Pokemon. So powerful, in fact, that these other fighters here, the Bug one, the Poison one, the Psychic one, stuff that resists and defeats an OG fighting type Pokemon. Yeah, these guys definitely get like special merit just because they can subdue this guy while also taking care of the fighting type role. So yeah, I expect to see a lot of Shadow Machamps. Definitely a solid, powerful Pokemon for this cup, and really wouldn't have anything to do in a Giratina meta because Giratina would just completely shut it down. When it comes to the grass type Pokemon, Tangrowth doesn't seem to be that hot at first glance, but if Tangrowth does have a shield advantage or an energy advantage, it can kind of steal the game in a way because it has that Rock Slide. Once again, another Pokemon here that is just completely shut down by Giratina, has nothing to do against Giratina, also shut down pretty heavily by Registeel, and it's able to flourish a bit more with those Pokemon out of the way, especially with flying type Pokemon taking over Giratina's role. The Rock Slide coming in clutch right there. Interesting thing to note with the fire type Pokemon, Charizard, you could run Air Slash or Wing Attack instead of Fire Spin, the result of which is that you'll have more positive matchups against fighting type Pokemon. You're already pretty good against the fighters, but now you really hammer them home because you're using flying type damage. Consequence of this action, of course, is that a lot of the ice and steel type Pokemon will be able to get like a leg up on you because you're no longer threatening them with that Fire Spin damage. So there are some trade-offs there. If you really think about it, Air Slash or Wing Attack Charizard is kind of more of a flying type Pokemon, which makes sense because you're using the flying type fast move. So definitely an option that you should keep in the back of your mind there. And then similarly, you could go with the Waterfall Gyarados. Similar to the Master League Premier Cup, the Waterfall will allow you to hammer down steel type Pokemon that are expecting the Dragon Breath. They're not going to appreciate it. You'll be able to get a bit more damage in against the Charmers. Doesn't exactly flip the matchups, but can hurt them a little bit more. And then you still maintain your fighting type matchups, which is pretty nice. Problem with that, though, is that the Flyers that before you're able to potentially beat because of Dragon Breath, yeah, they beat you now. And the Grass-type Pokemon, they already beat you before, but now they kind of beat you harder, so you gotta watch out for that. Once again, just like Charizard, an option to consider, but not the main dish here. When it comes to the Steel-type Pokemon, I'd say Steelix and the Galar Stumpfisk look pretty tantalizing, like at first, on paper, at a glance. You're like, hey man, no Registeel, and these guys are like, man, they got Ground-type coverage, that's crazy. But I don't really think they're all that great. One thing that they're really good for, though, in this particular meta, is going to be for shutting down Magnezone. I could see Magnezone getting out of control pretty easily, and the presence of the Steel Ground-type Pokemon kind of rein it in pretty hard. And then these guys definitely womp the Charmers like anybody else. The Flying-type Pokemon don't really have anything to do against them, so they're not terrible. But I don't think they're the best options. Like if you're thinking of a Steel type or an Ice type Pokemon to use, not the first thing that comes to mind. First thing that comes to mind would probably be like Lapras and like Magnezone. Yeah, that basically does it for the shoutouts. Just some interesting Pokemon to think about when it comes to the Ultra League Premier Cup. Not the best ones for sure, but could definitely stand out in a pretty unique way. Especially that Tangrowth, man. I'm gonna see some crazy Tangrowth wins. I'm gonna lose to Tangrowth. It's gonna suck. And that basically does it for the Ultra League Premier Cup Simplified. If you want to know more details about any of these individual matchups, definitely go on to PvPoke. You can run the simulations yourself. Very easy. And if you want some canned teams, well, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. I am planning on posting some Premier Cup Ultra League teams for you guys to riff off of, get some ideas off of. Could be pretty good. If you got any questions on this content, of course, comment below. Let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. If you enjoyed this content and you want to see more like it, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. I'd also like to give a special shout out to these Patreon supporters. If you want to support the Swagman on Patreon, link in the description.